Hi everyone. So I wanted to share my story of my first postpartum psychosis episode. It's kind of a long story, so I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I'll do my best to keep it as short as possible. Okay, so it all started with prenatal depression. So when I was pregnant with my first child, it was an unplanned pregnancy, and I always want to keep it positive because I love my son. He's like the best thing that ever happened to me. He's awesome. But when I found out I was pregnant, it was right after I got married, like 2 months after I got married, and I got depressed because I had plans of like finishing college, and I got my aunt's cat. So I wanted to finish college. Like I always wanted to do that, and I got married so that I could like move to Georgia with like my new husband and just like go to college over there, and just like in my head that was like me being more independent, but really it's like the opposite of being independent. It's like become independent on your husband instead of your parents, But yeah, so I was just like, I want to go and live my own life. So I got married, and I didn't want to have kids. I actually didn't want to have kids at all, but I got pregnant. So I wanted to keep my baby, obviously, and but I was depressed because I wasn't planning on doing that at that time. Also, right after I got pregnant, my husband at the time got told that he had to go to Ranger School, which is like a leadership school in the Army, and that was like the first time that he was gonna be away after we got married. And that wasn't really that hard because I went back home. We moved to Georgia after we got married, and then I went back home to be with my family because I was pregnant, and going through all of the medical checkups and all of that, I didn't want to be alone. So I went back home, and I was a little bit depressed, especially because I was like, okay, I'm pregnant, like this is for real now. Like I always knew my marriage was a real marriage, but I felt like, okay, like this is like seriously, like I'm gonna start a family, and like it's completely different from just getting married and finishing college and just like traveling with your husband, which was my plan. But it didn't happen that way, so I was a little bit depressed. So it started with prenatal depression, like I said. And then once I was actually given birth, the birth was traumatic. When I went to the hospital and everything, like I felt like, and I wrote it down kind of like, that I felt like I was treated like an animal a little bit. There was like no love there, from the nurses and stuff. I don't know. But it was not a good experience, and I can talk about that some other time. But obviously after I had my baby, I was really happy. So the next thing that happened is that I didn't have a lot of family support. After I had my baby, my mom was there for like 2 weeks. Like she stayed there with me, but she had to leave. She had to go back to work, so she couldn't stay with me. And that was really hard because I was in Georgia by myself, and it was scary, to like have your first baby and then like no one's around but your husband. And it was just like an awkward feeling. I don't know how to explain it. And then what started happening, like right after I had my baby, because of the fact that I was stressed, that I knew my mom was only going to be there for 2 weeks, I started having some intrusive thoughts and some nightmares about, like, I remember this one nightmare that I had where I had, like, the nightmare was about me having twins, and then I was only taking care of one baby, and then the other baby, I forgot that baby in a closet and I wasn't feeding it. So when I found it, he was like really skinny and really frail, and it scared me to death. Like I was like, oh my god, I didn't feed my baby, like what is wrong with me? And it was just so scary. Like I woke up with the feeling of like, with a horrible feeling. So a lot of these like postpartum things will start with intrusive thoughts. It's like these thoughts that you have of like, what if my baby falls out of the window? And it's like this random thought. And it doesn't make you a bad mom. It doesn't mean that like you're a terrible person, but it comes to you like, what if this happens? And, or you just imagine something happening and you can't stop thinking about that thing happening. And, you know, those are intrusive thoughts. So that's how it kind of started out for me. Like I said, it started out with like some prenatal depression. And then after I had my baby, with some intrusive thoughts and some nightmares. But everything went smoothly. Like after, you know, I kind of settled into like being a mom and like having my baby, because of the fact that I didn't have to work. I was so lucky to just like be home with him and just like get used to that. Like I really enjoyed it. Like I really like, I would stay home and just like spend time with him and just like cuddle with him, take care of him, change his diaper, you know, like I had my little routine. And it was just beautiful. Like it was like amazing. I have no complaints. Like I didn't have, like after those like intrusive thoughts and nightmares at the very beginning, I had no depression, no nothing. Like I miss my family and I miss my support system, but I had like no negative things happening. Like it was like beautiful. Like it was like the best, some of the best days of my life. And so everything was going pretty good for a little while. Everything was going smoothly. And then my ex-husband went on his first deployment when my son was 9 months old. And that's kind of how the real like bad things started happening with me and my mental health. So, and I don't blame that, you know, it's just some people are really great at it. Like I met a lot of women that they're just like amazing at like being military wives, and they just like kick ass and they just like do really, really good. And like, so I can't really say like, oh, it's because I was a military wife. Like, no, like some people, a lot of blush on my face. But anyway, some people are really, really good at that. And they're just like, you know, some people are really good under pressure. And I feel like I'm like that sometimes, but just not that kind of pressure. Like that kind of pressure didn't work for me. I don't know. So, yes, where was I? So yes, his first deployment, when he went on his first deployment, I had to be by myself. And I didn't have to, like I actually went back home and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go back home and stay there while he's on his first deployment. But sometimes like I really bump heads with like especially my mom, and I think that's what was happening. I don't remember exactly. I think like my sister was living with my mom and I also had to stay with my mom, and I just like I felt like I wanted to be in my own house, you know, like I just wanted to be in my own home. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go back to Georgia and just like try to do this on my own with like my baby, because I had to kind of get used to that. He's gonna be going away and I just have to get used to being by myself with the baby, and I want to be in my own house and just like, let me just go back there. And so I went back and I spent I think it was 4 months by myself with my baby, and it was really scary for me. I had never been by myself before. Like not only had I not ever lived by myself, I had never been by myself with a baby. And I started having these really bad panic attacks of like, just panic attacks. At the time, there were other times later where I had panic attacks about being by myself with my babies, like, especially when my husband wasn't there. It was like, oh my God, like, I'm by myself. I didn't have any friends because, like, I'm not good at making friends, so I didn't make any friends up there, and I was just by myself. And I was just like, if an emergency happens, like, who's gonna take care of my baby? Like, if I don't wake up in the morning, who's gonna take care of him? You know? And I think it's also like that nightmare of like me not feeding my baby that I had at the very beginning. I'm like, oh my God, who's gonna feed him if something happens to me? Who's gonna take care of him? Who's gonna change his diaper? And I also had a really bad habit of reading really scary news stories. And one news story that I read right before my husband, or my ex-husband, left for his deployment was this story about this mom. And I don't even know if I should say it because like I don't want to scare other women. So trigger warning, skip over this part if you're easily triggered, okay? I read the story about this mom that left her baby in the crib and just neglected them so much that the baby died. And I'm not going to say too many details. I don't like to scare people because like those things scare me so much and give me so much like anxiety that like I don't want to do that to other people. So basically like she left a baby in the crib and had a boyfriend, and she was also a military wife, but she was like cheating on her husband and had a boyfriend in the house, and she had like 2 other kids, and she decided to neglect that one baby and just leave him in the crib. And it was so upsetting to me. Like it was like, oh my god, like how could she do this? And I feel like when you read stuff like that, and I also had like low self-esteem problems, so I was like, what if I did that? What if I left? Like, not that I would do it, but it was just like, what if like I forget my baby and he stays in the crib? Or like I said, what if I don't wake up and he's just like in the crib by himself? You know? And like all these like negative thoughts. And at the time I wasn't trained, like now I've trained myself to kind of stop those negative thoughts. And I still like have arguments with my mom, especially about, you know, when I say like negative things, but really like I've made so much improvement. Like things that I read, things that are said to me, like it's a lot harder for them to affect me the way they did back then. So yes, when he was deployed and when I was by myself, I would have these intrusive, I guess you could call them intrusive thoughts, and also like the panic attacks, because those intrusive thoughts would cause panic attacks. Like my heart would start racing, and you know, I'd have a panic attack basically. I mean, if you've had a panic attack, you know what it is. If you haven't, it's basically like you feel like you're gonna die, and it's just like scary. So when he came back, I decided to seek some help. Like I went to, you know, the military hospital that was there where we lived, because we lived inside the military installation. I went to the military hospital and I was like, you know what? Like I went to like the regular doctor and I was like, you know what? I'm having some anxiety. Like what do I do? Like, can you refer me to like a therapist or something? And he's like, oh, so you're here for medication for anxiety? And I was like, not really. Like I don't really care about medication. I just like want to talk to someone. I feel like that's what I want. That's what I need. And they referred me to like this lady, and she was like super nice at the beginning, but for some reason when I started talking to her, she's like, you know what? I think you're hiding something. I think you're hiding something. Like there's something you're not telling me. And then when she said that, I started having like a lot of like memories of my childhood that just like things that I didn't want to remember. And I started just getting worse and worse. Like she didn't help me. Like saying that didn't help me. For some reason, like it just didn't help me. And it actually made me feel worse. Why? I have no idea. Later on, I kind of figured out that I should have been talking to somebody else. Like I'm Catholic, and I like God stuff. Like even if it's not Catholic, but if it's just like generic Christian stuff, like it really helps me. And that's what I feel like I should have been seeking out back then. But at the same time, like I wasn't ready for that at that time, so I didn't. And yeah, so I forgot what I was saying, but basically yeah, so I went to seek help. She didn't really help me. I started to feel worse, and what ended up happening was that after she told me that, you know, that there's like you're hiding something, or like there's something wrong with you. I don't know what she told me, but she told me something like really negative that made me feel really bad. I couldn't sleep for a whole week. Like that's what happened. Like for some reason, like that happened. I was also, and the other thing that happened that kind of ties into this was that at that very same time, like when he came back from the deployment and I went to seek help, he was getting his security clearance thing, right? I'm not going to go too much into that, but he was getting a security clearance, like a top secret security clearance. And he told me like, hey, listen, when I go through this, they're going to be watching you, like literally like hacking into your phone, hacking into your computer. And I mean, I don't know if I don't know how true this is. Like there are people that know like exactly how it works, but I don't know exactly how it works, but that's what he told me. He's like, they're going to hack into your phone, they're going to hack into your computer, they're going to like look at literally everything from your life, and like I don't know, it was just like really scary to me because I was worried about my family. Like I was like, what if my family has something, you know? And again, I don't want to put my family on the spot and exactly what I was worried about, but I was worried about a few things. So I started, and this is something that's really unhealthy, you know, when you start thinking that somebody's watching you. And that's what started happening to me. I was like, oh my God, like they're watching me. And they really were watching me. But I mean, it wasn't in the way that I was taking it, you know? It's like my brain started thinking like they're watching me all the time. Like my brain went into like they're watching me all the time. And I started thinking like they have cameras set up in our house. And like this was because I was already stressed out. If you remember, like I said, you know, I was going to that therapy and that lady kind of, and I don't want to blame it on her, but it was just kind of like the thing that kind of triggered it, you know, and she had told me like, there's something wrong with you. So I started thinking there's something wrong with me. And now he's telling me like, they're going to be watching you. Okay. So there's something wrong with me and they're watching me. And I'm having intrusive thoughts about like bad things happening to me and my baby. And like all of that together is just like a recipe for disaster, you know, when it comes to like your mental health. And I was by myself. And like I just remember like just like kind of like freezing, because that's what happens to me when like something is really stressful to me. Like I freeze. Like I'm just, and like you might even notice that when I'm talking, like I'll freeze. I'm like, because I have to like kind of like gather my thoughts and like, okay, or like breathe. So yeah, like I just remember being in this state of like, I don't know what to do. Like they're watching me, like I don't know what to do. Like and there's clearly, you know, like this lady said, there's something wrong with me. So like I don't know what's going on. And like I said, I couldn't sleep for a whole week. And I studied psychology for a little bit because that was my major in college. And there's like a lot of studies done on people where when you don't sleep for several days, like you don't sleep at all, your brain goes into psychosis. Why does this happen? I don't know. I didn't read enough about it, but that's just something that happens when you don't sleep. Your brain can go into psychosis. Obviously not always, but it can. So that's what happened to me. I didn't sleep for a whole week because I was so stressed out over everything that was happening that I literally didn't sleep for like 5 straight days. And that's when like obviously things started to really spiral out of control. And like at that like 5th or 6th day, I was just like out of it. Like I wasn't even me. Like I was somebody else. And it was like the big thing that happened at that time is that I called the cops on my husband because I thought he was trying to kill me. Like that's how bad it had snowballed. Like it's like this little thing happened and this little thing happened and this little thing happened, and it just like snowballed out of control. Like it was just like out of control. And so yeah, so that day like it was really bad, you know. It's like a really bad moment. It kind of traumatized my ex-husband too. Like he always, and you know, the relationship's not very good right now. He has cats like interrupting. But when things were better, you know, he did tell me that was like very traumatizing for him, because obviously like somebody, like your wife is telling you that you're trying to kill her and calls the cops on you. Like how is that not going to be traumatizing, right? So, and you know, I don't want to say too much that's going to put other people in like, I don't want to tell other people's personal information. I'm just kind of telling my story, but that happened. So after I called the cops on him and things got, you know, really bad with my mental health, I told him to drive me down to Florida. So he had to take like emergency leave and drive me down to Florida, which he did, you know. He didn't like hesitate. At first I did call my mom, and I wanted my mom to fly to Georgia because I knew that there was some, like, this was really bad. Like I wasn't doing well. I wanted my mom to fly up to Georgia, but she was working and she couldn't. And it was like, I was always kind of upset about that, but you know, what can you do? Like my mom has to work. Like she was a single mom. Like, and I'll go into that later, but my mom has to work, and you know, I completely understand that. So when I went down to Florida, it was just like, I was still doing really bad. I ended up being hospitalized, and that's when they told them like, she has psychosis. Like, that's what she has, psychosis. So, they also had, like, post-traumatic stress disorder. Like, I remember seeing that on the papers of that very first hospital stay. They said, like, post-traumatic stress disorder because of just the intrusive thoughts, I guess. I don't know, but they diagnosed me with something, and they just kind of, like, let me out, like, you know, just, like, be really careful, you know, with everything that's happening. And yeah, that was my first psychosis episode. You know, my family is kind of really adamant about saying that it was postpartum psychosis. And I want to say that, you know, there was a lot of factors when it comes to, you know, the intrusive thoughts that I was having. But really, like, if you listen to the story, you know, there was a lot of other things that were involved in that. And a lot of it doesn't even have anything to do with me having a baby. Like, it was just more of, yes, I was having some negative thoughts about, like, oh my God, like, what if something happens to my baby? Or, like, what if this, what if that? But really, there were so many other factors that triggered that first psychosis episode that, you know, I myself think that, like, it was just psychosis that I went into because of everything that happened. But, you know, I feel like my family, like, they're always kind of afraid of me saying that, like, I had a psychosis episode, and they're like, no, it was postpartum, like, you know, it kind of makes you more, like, I don't know, like, it makes you seem less crazy, and it makes it seem more like it was just hormonal and this and that. But, like, you know, I like to be honest about, like, what really happened. So it's, you know, I don't really know what it's gonna be called, but they said it was psychosis, and that's what I feel like it was. But in the papers, it does say postpartum psychosis, you know, and a lot of the times, when you have a baby, they'll call it that because, yes, your hormones will fluctuate a little bit, and the fact that you have a baby will make you so much more vulnerable to just, like, freaking out, because it's just like, you know, your body wants to protect that baby. So anything in your environment that's going crazy, that's going haywire, it's going to, like, your body's going to be like, I need to fix this, or, like, I don't know what's going on, or, you know, like, you kind of freak out as a mom because, like, you have this instinct to protect your baby, and you don't even know that you're doing it to protect your baby, but, like, you're really doing it to protect your baby. So I don't know if all of this makes sense, but that's my story with my first, and I'm gonna call it postpartum psychosis episode. Like I said, I don't even really know whether it's postpartum or not, but I'm just gonna call it that. That's what some of the doctors call it. And, you know, I kind of feel bad in my family. Like, they always want to kind of say that it was postpartum, and it is what it is. I mean, if the doctors call it that, I guess that's what it is, you know, whatever. But that's basically what happened. I'm trying to see if I have any other notes that I'm missing on this. No, that's pretty much it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other stories and a lot of other things that happened. Unfortunately, it got a lot worse. And things got a lot better in my life, and they would get a lot worse, and they would get a lot better. And I guess that's just life. That's just how life is for some people sometimes. And that's how my life has been. But that was the very first one. I hope that this video was informative to some people. And if you have any questions, ask me. Like, I know this is only my second video ever, and I don't even know who's gonna watch it. But you know what? If you have questions, ask me. Like, I'm willing to answer whatever question that anyone may have. Like, I don't feel uncomfortable answering questions at all, or talking about anything. Like, I like to be open and honest, and just, you know, sharing stuff. I like sharing stuff. I don't know what else to say. But alright, so that's pretty much it. Like I said, ask me anything, I'll answer it. Bye.